Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of ModChat. For those who do not know, this is a podcast I do here in two different forms. First of all, it is available in a video visual form here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels, and it is also available in a audio only form like an actual podcast, so you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to. Simply look up ModChat, all one word, on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it's available on most of them. Either way, this is a show where I come on here at least once a month. I talk to you all about some things in the video game modding, console modding scenes that I find new, interesting, cool, maybe even funny, just things that I want to look into more, share with you all, and maybe do a little bit of show and tell. Usually I do appear on camera a little bit, but this time around I'm not doing it again just like the last time because I actually did want to highlight this here a little bit. If you're looking at the video visual version of this episode, several people had asked me, how did you get your Wipeout looking so clean? And I can assure you, this is not an emulator. This is actually from a free and open source project called Wipeout Phantom Edition, where you're able to take the original PS1 version of Wipeout, you're able to combine it with this version essentially, and really this here is a native port running on PC using the assets from the PS1 version, so that's why it looks nice and crispy and beautiful right here. But some people really enjoyed the gameplay last time around, but I didn't shout it out on that episode, so here you go. You get a little bit more gameplay, and you also get a shout out to a pretty cool project if you love Wipeout, want to play it on your PC, and want to see what it can really push. However, this is not about Wipeout. This is going to be about several pretty big topics, I would say, kind of ranging all over the place. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump into this episode of ModChat. Now, the first thing here that I wanted to tackle, just because I know a lot of people were wondering about this, and this is something that I was excited for, this is another update we got from the Xbox One, Xbox Series SystemOS Kernel Exploit that I have been covering here. This is from Emma, otherwise known as Carrot Cake on Twitter, in which they have a video here which she states, reverse shell on Xbox retail mode. Video starts right as the exploit starts on the Series X. Now, it's only 55 seconds right here, but you can see that she has connected using Netcat. We'll go ahead and make this full screen as well, just so we can get a little more information on this, and so I can kind of break it down and show you all. But you can see that now Netcat is listening on port 6969. We should get an update here soon, which, there we go, connected to, this is the Xbox's IP address from her computer's IP address. But if you look at the file path right here, this is mounted as a S drive, and it's pointed to program files, Windows apps, and this right here I know is the path to the GameScript application on the Xbox itself. So now what Emma's going to do is change directory to the S drive, do a directory listing, and you can see right here, this has now essentially mounted the S partition from the Xbox onto the local computer here, and it can all be navigated. So you see apps, clips, deployment, Microsoft, net shared service. You see several folders here that are on the Xbox itself. Now what Emma's done right here is quite literally just had the text of nice and saved it into a hackt.txt file. Doing another directory listing, you can see that that text file has now been saved onto the Xbox itself. And now she's going to call that text file, read it. As you can see, the text file can be read, and you have nice right here. So you have not only read, but you also have write permissions on the Xbox itself, which is pretty big to see. She now did a change directory into, she now changed over to the O drive on the Xbox, changed to the licenses directory, and right here it shows everything with the licenses. So volume in drive 0 is DVD-ROM, in case there was anything there. But you can see the licenses available for this, and one of them she's going to highlight is for Vermintide 2, which that is for that exploitable game, which we'll hopefully be able to see some magic from here pretty soon. So this just all proves, oh, and she was able to print out the XML for that license. So this really all shows right here that that is complete and that is able to get done. And I wanted to show that here because I wanted to have that introduction for the actual exploit announcement and release itself being Collateral Damage. quite literally, that's what it's called. It even states here, Collateral Damage is a kernel exploit for the Xbox System OS using CVE 2024-388. It targets Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles running kernel versions, and there's 3 exploitable kernel versions right here. I know my Xbox One X, for example, is on this one, which is 4478. The initial entry point is via the GameScript UWP application. This exploit was developed by Emma Kirkpatrick, Vulnerability Discovery and Exploitation, and Lander Brandt, PE Loader Development. Now, there's a few caveats here that they talk about, and they state, this initial release is largely intended for developers. Currently, a way to place files into the local state directory of GameScript is required via an app such as Advanced File Explorer Full Trust. This is due to the requirement of placing the stage2.bin and run executable files into the local state directory. In the near future, a payload will be supplied which will load those files over the network. So the initial payload will simply be a script which can be inputted via a USB keyboard emulator. And that is a thing to mention on here as well, because some people might be wondering if I'm going to show it here. Well, get this, I will let you in on a little bit of a secret here, although it's not going to be a secret when I share it, but hey, I'm kind of just joking on that. I was actually working on a tutorial video for this. Unfortunately, when I set up my console, not only in the videos I was making, I didn't mention Advanced File Explorer because it didn't seem to be a requirement of this, but on top of that, I actually did end up downloading later on the Advanced File Explorer application. Unfortunately, there's essentially 2 stages to it. One of them is when you first launch it, you have to go through a process of, I guess, giving it elevated privileges. But the other thing is, if you try to access any of the other drives, there's another download that you have to perform for that, and unfortunately, I did not know that, and I was not able to do that. So I do have Advanced File Explorer, but it doesn't work for what I need it to, thereby saying that unfortunately, I can't use my system as it is right now with the current exploit. If I take it online, it will remove the GameScript application, unfortunately, but really at this point, I really just need to wait for Collateral Damage to be updated so that I can only use GameScript and I don't have to use Advanced File Explorer. And once that's been updated, I can then end up trying it on my system. Unfortunately, because there are a couple files I need to copy over, I don't have those advanced privileges on the system. So I'll just have to wait and see what happens with the magic here. Either way, continuing on, they do state the reverse shell example provided here requires that your console is connected to a network. When connecting your console to a network, be very careful to avoid connecting to the internet and updating. Try to block connectivity to Xbox Live as much as possible, at the very least by setting your DNS to invalid servers, which that's why I was recommending setting your DNS to 127.0.0.1, just being the local host to really throw all attempts to connect to Xbox Live into a black hole. This exploit is not fully reliable. It relies on a CPU side channel as well as a race condition, both of which have the potential to fail. In the event of a failure, the exploit may alert you that it has failed via network output, or the console itself may crash and reboot. Now for the usage here, it is thankfully simple enough, it seems. You do have to modify this GameScript autosave text file to the IP address of your local PC that you're going to communicate to your Xbox from. You then need to copy the 3 files that are in the release zip into the local state directory, which is where they were at before. You need to listen to port 7070 on your PC using something such as Netcat, which I will say, getting a version of Netcat that didn't flag antivirus and get automatically removed, that was probably the hardest part of this here, but when I was able to get that, I did have to kill some processes because I had a couple processes that were listening on port 7070 on my computer, but once that was done, I was able to at least get Netcat up and running. Then once you have that save and everything set up there, you open up the GameScript application, you run the code, and you should get something like this here on your PC, which is similar to what we were seeing before, and that's why I showed that video at the beginning. Now do keep in mind here, there are some extra notes. For experimentation, they do state lots of additional work is needed to bring this to the point of being a user-friendly tool for loading Homebrew onto the Xbox, but I hope that this provides a good starting point. If you'd like to play around with running code as system, you can put your code in the post-exploit function in postexploit.c. Now for further work, they do state there is lots more to do on this, but as the kernel part is done, I want to share it with the community so developers could start poking around with system privileges. Here are a few things I'm still hoping to add in the future: sideloading support, unsigned non-UWP process launching, and SSH support, although additional ideas are welcome. They also want to extend some extra thanks over to Chompy, TuxUser, Baw, Xbox One Research, and the Xbox Scene Discord. So we do have something really cool right here, and this is really the first big exploit, in my opinion, that we've publicly seen for the Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles. The downside is, though, that you do have a very limited set, and I really mean that you have a limited set of systems that you can really do this with. You have to have a system not only on one of these exploitable kernels, but it has to have the GameScript UWP application. It has to be kept offline, because if you bring it online, you do get that GameScript application revoked. And on top of that, even right now, you might have some folks, such as me, for example, where I've done those things, I have it all set up, but because of how the exploit currently is in its version 1 iteration, since it requires the advanced file manager, the full trust version, since I don't have that, I can't play around with this at this moment. I really just have to wait for Collateral Damage to be updated. But either way, it is cool that we do have this here right now available for us, and I'm sure some people have some fun poking around with it, playing around with it, and it'll be cool to see what can happen from this. Now, it's been a while since I've talked about anything lawsuit related here on ModChat, and that's not to say that lawsuits have cooled down. That's just saying that I haven't seen anything that I really want to talk about directly on here, but this story here, I'm sure this is circulated enough where many people have heard about it here, but it was big enough, and I looked into it as well too, that I did find this to be pretty interesting. So this is from Torrent Freak, in which they state here that Nintendo sues modded hardware and the r/Switch Pirates moderator Archbox, which I'll say here, I've never seen a Reddit moderator like in this direct regard here be sued by Nintendo. It's not like this the first time this happened. The only other time, I guess, with Reddit moderators I can think of directly, the times that I know of at least, is that I believe years ago there was a Reddit user who they end up leaking a 21 Pilots song onto Reddit, and the record company was attempting to get this user's information from Reddit so that they can end up serving them with a lawsuit. And to my knowledge, I believe Reddit had just kind of came and said, we don't have enough information to identify this user, and it didn't go anywhere. However, in regards to this here, this is an actual lawsuit that is filed. 2 lawsuits, actually. A lot of this here is, in my opinion, no doubt exacerbated by the release of the MIG switch here, but you'll be surprised here, at least with modded hardware, I'm not going to be as lenient on here. And we'll start going into this a bit here. So they state here, in regards to modded hardware, Nintendo targeted modded hardware behind the scenes. The gaming giant reached out to its alleged owner and operator, Michigan resident Ryan Daly, who also operates under the alias Homebrew Homie. In March, Nintendo threatened to sue him, after which both parties agreed that the allegedly unlawful activity, which includes selling MIG devices and modded consoles, would stop. Despite this agreement, modded hardware didn't close shop. That led to further outreach by Nintendo earlier this month, after which it still remained online. Daly said that he was looking for a new lawyer, but Nintendo's patience had run out and followed up with a lawsuit. In a complaint filed at a federal court in Seattle, Washington, Nintendo accuses modded hardware of copyright infringement and violating the DMCA by trafficking in circumvention devices, among other things. Now, in regards to the complaint itself here, they state that the complaint mentions that modded hardware sells several pieces of hardware that circumvent its piracy protections. These include mod chips and the MIG switch, a memory card that allows people to play pirated copies of Nintendo Switch games on authentic consoles. In addition to selling hardware hacks, the defendant also offered mail-in modding services and modded versions of Switch consoles for the less technically inclined. These were reportedly loaded with pirated games, according to the complaint. Defendant not only offers the hardware and firmware to create and play pirated games, but he also provides his customers with copies of pirated Nintendo games, the complaint reads. Typically, when a customer purchases a hacked console or the circumvention services, defendant pre-installs on the console a portfolio of ready-to-play pirated games, including some of Nintendo's most popular titles, such as its Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid games. Now, the reason why I was saying at the beginning here I'm not going to be as lenient on modded hardware is because, I mean, it states it here a bit, but to kind of restate here, and I'd looked at the original document here. Now, they were up and running for a while. This was modded hardware, but in March, Nintendo did reach out to them informally. It was said in the complaint that the owner of this business ended up reaching back out to Nintendo and came not only to a verbal agreement, but also a written agreement that they would cease operations. However, the website still remained online and they were still taking orders. So there was a second, more formal, like the first one was informal, the second one, I guess a couple months later from Nintendo, was a formal cease and desist. Now, even with the site still up and running, there was a second cease and desist which was issued, and that was an actual formal one. But again, it seemed like this time around, Modern Hardware ended up getting a lawyer involved who communicated with Nintendo. They asked for more time, and then when the time had lapsed, they ended up having another lawyer reach out who said, hey, we'll reach back out to you with more information. And then Nintendo tried to contact a few more times and there was no responses. So that's what ended up exacerbating it to this lawsuit right here. The reason why I'm really stressing this here is not only Nintendo did reach out to him, but he even reached back out to Nintendo in response and agreed multiple times that what he was doing, according to him and Nintendo, was wrong, and that he was going to cease operations. To which he didn't, to which Nintendo reached out a second time, not with a lawsuit, but with another cease and desist, which he still seemed to fumble as well too. So that's why in regards to this gentleman here, I'm not really sympathetic in this, just because it seems like he went about it the entirely wrong way. On top of that as well too, his website is down now, but when I was seeing it, there were sales and services where you could buy mod chips, you could buy pre-modded systems, but you can even send off your system to get modded, and he was preloading them. He at least had an option to preload those systems with a bunch of pirated games, which if you follow the channel here for a while, I've always been against that in that regard, and I've always said in regards to modified systems, if there's going to be sales of them, you really cannot be putting pirated games on there. People do that, people are attracted to that, but that's what's going to attract this kind of attention as well too. So that's why when I initially looked at this with modded hardware, I was like, you know, this guy kind of did everything wrong. According to what I had seen, he had a ton of customer complaints because he was not sending out his orders on time, he was not updating people, and then from the Nintendo side of house, he couldn't properly respond to them either. He was agreeing to one thing, doing another thing, not changing his ways, and I just don't know how you end up dropping the ball so hard on both sides, for your customers and even for the company who's coming after you. The second lawsuit here is also interesting here because originally I had seen that it was just against Archbox, which I looked it up and Archbox was nothing that I had heard of, but turned out Archbox is actually the username of one of the moderators on the r/Switch Pirates subreddit, which for the uninitiated, I mean, it says so on the tin here, it's a subreddit that is all about the piracy scene on the Switch. Now, going against Archbox was interesting here, and they are allegedly a Arizona resident, but they state here that he has been connected to several pirate shops which copies of unauthorized games are distributed. And for those who do not know, it's like pirate shops or free shops or third-party shops. I don't use them, I've never used any of them, but to my knowledge, these are typically shops where you use the application Tinfoil, you install it on your Switch, and then you end up putting in a configuration to connect Tinfoil to one of these services, you end up refreshing it, and from there, as long as you have proper access, you're able to go in, you're able to download games, DLC, application, updates, and all of that, all for free. They do allege here that defendant is the operator, overseer, and driving force behind several pirate shops, through which defendant has offered massive libraries of pirated Nintendo Switch games. In addition to running these pirate shops, the defendant allegedly helped people to obtain and use circumvention software so they could play pirated games. This activity was allegedly boosted through the Switch Pirates subreddit, where Archbox was a moderator. Now, it looks like for anybody who has tried or dabbled in these, or at least heard of them here, there's probably going to be some familiar names. But they state that Archbox is believed to be involved in Jack in the Shop, Turtle in the Shop, and Neko Drive, which all shut down following a cease and desist letter Nintendo sent in March. They do state here a fourth shop, Libera Shop, is still operational, presumably on Telegram, allegedly promoting and offering thousands of pirated Nintendo games to the public. Although do keep in mind, this article was written about 2 weeks ago from the time I'm recording this here, so Libera's shop could also be down as well too. Now they were really going into detail here on the original complaint, like putting up plenty of screenshots and such here, but one of the things they were pinning against Archbox here is about being a self-proclaimed pirate here, in which this stated from the complaint, defendant is well aware that his conduct is unlawful and infringes Nintendo's intellectual property rights. Indeed, defendant has bragged publicly that he is a pirate who isn't going to give Nintendo $50 for a game. So there was less focus on Archbox right here, and if you do want to read through the full complaints, they are available in PDF form from the Torrent Freak article. However, these two were unique enough that I did want to talk about these because not only they are bigger lawsuits, but in regards to this here, you not only have a shop owner who was offering the mix switch, offering mod chips, chipping services, but also including pirated games, which no doubt put a huge target on their back, but they ignored multiple communications from Nintendo. They did not abide even when they agreed to what they were doing with Nintendo. Like this all, what I'm saying is with Model Hardware, this all could have been ironed out back in March. Like the first C&D, he agreed to it as well too, so it should have been done there, but it didn't. That's not what happened. And on top of that, them going after a Reddit moderator here is something that you really don't see or hear much about either. But again, it seems like this moderator was at least allegedly here either directly or very closely working with several pirate shops that were out there. Now, to get some lighter news in here, I did want to talk about not just one, but multiple different ports that I've seen that are pretty cool here. Now, this is from Headshot 2017, and I just love this here. People know, if you've been watching ModChat, I love to cover these ports at least in some way, but 3D Space Pinball or 3D Pinball Space Cadet, it has been getting several ports based on a decompilation project, and this here is 3D Pinball Space Cadet for the DS. It's been built with the Blocks DS SDK, and it does require you to download the files and such on here, the NDS file. Although the thing is, you do need to have a copy of the game itself because you are going to have to pull the cadet.dat file from there. So you do need the data files, just like many of these decompilation project ports. However, as long as you have a copy of the game and you compare it to the NDS file and play it on something like a flash cart, boom, you have 3D Pinball for the DS, which is really awesome to see. Looking at this here, I think Headshot 2017 has also done a few other ports as well. They've done Super Tux for the PS2, for example. This one, it's not as direct on here, but this at least the Super Mario 64 model within San Andreas, so it's cool to see that here. I'm looking at their other repositories here, and you can also see that they've not only ported it to the DS, but they've also ported it to the PS2 and even the Dreamcast, and these are all in different forms, I guess you can say. Like the Dreamcast one, which this is not the only Dreamcast thing we're going to see, but the Dreamcast port right here, this is currently in development. The PS2 port, for example, I believe, yes, this one does have a release and it is still getting updates on here, which same thing, it's been built with the PS2 SDK. You do need to bring the game data over, however, you are able to now play this on the PlayStation 2. Although it seems like I would take a stab at saying the DS port is going to be the most complete one here, but it is still getting updates. Since we just talked about recompilation in the last episode here, I had seen some people saying that it is cool seeing these types of efforts and projects, but you don't really see too many games come out of them at times, but that's why I wanted to highlight this one here, being Mythical Ninja Starring Goemon for the N64 gets a fan-made PC recompilation project. So this is not a decomp here, this is talking about the recompilation efforts that we had talked about before. This here states over from GBA Temp, the Nintendo 64 has been the main console for modern recompilation projects to PC, and with the recent release of the N64 Recomp tool just a couple of months ago, more recompilation projects would start showing up with due time. And today, another game joins the ranks for proper PC ports. Mythical Ninja Starring Goemon was just the second entry of the Goemon series released in North America back in 1998. However, the franchise had been going strong in Japan for far longer, and this title helped to further cement the presence of the Goemon series in the West. Today, this classic title for the N64 joins the growing list of recompilation titles that get a proper PC port with 60 frames per second and widescreen support in this initial state. The recompilation was developed by user Chlorfmorph from the Gonberry Goemon Discord server, where the recompilation project was released based on the N64 recomp that was unveiled back on May of this year, with a very similar interface to that of Majora's Mask recompilation that got released almost alongside the N64 recomp tool. So looking at this here, this is a tweet saying that someone on the Goemon Discord server I'm in released a recompilation for this game, and getting to play the game in widescreen and 60 FPS is such a blessing, though the recomp only supports the Japanese version as far as I know. And we can take a look at a video right here, and I just end up making this full screen right here. Now do keep in mind this doesn't look the best because not only this is dealing with Twitter compression, but I could also tell this is not, the video is not displaying at 60 frames per second from what I can tell. However, it is cool to see that this again is running natively on the PC. This is not an emulator right here, and again you get not only 60 frames per second, but you also end up getting widescreen support, which looks beautiful for this. So this is a game I've never played, but pretty cool to see overall on here. I do wonder why they end up going with the Japanese version as opposed to the English version. That's more just something I'm kind of wondering out loud. But either way, still really cool to see, and I love seeing more games kind of liberated with these efforts. But this was stated here saying, woo, this is an actual hardware capture of Sonic Freak 94's incredible port of Sonic Mania to the Sega Dreamcast, compiled with the latest SH-ELF GCC 14.1.0 toolchain, running on the tip of the Callistios SDK's master branch, streaming in assets from the virtual file system over the network, capturing standard out, standard air from the Dreamcast, running like a boss. We got Sonic Freak 94 showing us around the app level code he beautifully ported, me on SDK OS duty, making sure we didn't break anything with all the new features and commits, and Indo Oleg on compiler duty since we found an ICE with GCC 14 getting pissed off over some stateful C++ lambda in the render path. Eggman is so screwed. Dreamcast community assemble, and there is about a 1-minute video right here which we can check out. Now looking at this here in the background and even in the front, you can see the code and such running and I guess the debug output. However, you can see here that this is indeed Sonic Mania, and this is running on this is a Dreamcast build right here that we are looking at, and so far it looks beautiful. It looks really awesome, and this is one of those games I'm happy that recently in the last few years, it's a more recent title because it came out in, what, 2016, 2017? I want to say it was 2017. Either way, it's one of those games that is a newer Sonic entry. It's a really good one as well, too. And the Homebrew community has kind of taken upon themselves to really just port it to as many platforms as possible. Is it perfect so far? No. Is it going to be expected to be perfect? No, not at this time, at least while it's still being developed. But still, you can see this is amazing progress so far. However, this developer here, Stefanos Cornelius, seems to have worked on getting Grand Theft Auto 3 thanks to the RE3 reverse engineering project, because the code is still out there, mind you. The original developers aren't touching it anymore, but the code is still out there. However, they've been using that project to work on getting Grand Theft Auto 3 ported to the Dreamcast, of all things, which I still love to see here. He has said here, menu to in-game with 3D models, still very early testing. And this here is, again, this is super early on so far. If you've played, it's funny because when I first saw this video, I didn't read the top text. So I was thinking, like, the first thought that came in my head was, oh wow, this is Grand Theft Auto 3 on Game Boy Advance. That is a really awesome proof of concept, kind of like Open Lara or Doom that was ported over there. However, no, when I actually read this was Dreamcast here. It's just, this is how the port is very, very early on. As you can see, it's slow. A ton of stuff is not rendering. A ton of stuff is not showing. However, if you've played Grand Theft Auto 3, especially the beginning, you can tell this is Grand Theft Auto 3 And this is on Raycast, so this is, again, running on the Dreamcast, and there is active development on here. Now, this is really early on, but scrolling down a little bit, one thing that is worth mentioning is that it is using a expanded RAM mod, so to speak, within the emulator. So he states here, yeah, using 32 megabyte RAM mod, though it just barely needs it. Biggest problem is I don't know how renderware works yet, so no idea how to correctly implement it. Also running out of VRAM all the time. But he's been working at this pretty diligently, and you can even see, like, that was from, as I'm recording that, I mean, that was on, like, this was, for example, the progress that was happening on the 12th, right here, like July 12th. 2 days later, that was that video. This was another one here. This here is the most recent one where he's saying, now with 100% more cars, which at the time of recording this, he just ended up tweeting this about 25 minutes ago, but you can see he's making pretty quick work of this so far. So I was kind of joking around a bit. I half joked. I ended up quote tweeting it, and I had said, you know, at this point now, we're going to be able to answer the age-old question, what if Grand Theft Auto 3 was on the Dreamcast? Because it looks like we have Grand Theft Auto 3 on the Dreamcast. At least it's coming. Now, this might be a little bit of a depressing note to go out on, but at the same time, I did find some humor in it here, where what I like to do at the end of these episodes is I like to cover something that is cool, funny, interesting, and kind of directly or even tangentially related to the world of modding here. And one of them was from Go Nintendo here, where Doug Bowser, who is the CEO of Nintendo of America, had commented on LinkedIn about Walmart selling ROM hacks. Now, for people who do not know, this has been pretty common. I know on Amazon we've seen it where there's been a lot of pirated and reproduction cartridges for like the Super Nintendo, the N64, that have gone up on sale there. Of course, you see it on places like AliExpress, but we've even seen it on Walmart.com, where it's really funny. Where even like these days, at least I don't know right now, I didn't do a search immediately, but as of like a few years ago, you can get DS flash cards off of Walmart. The thing is, some people might be wondering, is Walmart really selling that stuff? Yes and no. It's similar to Amazon, or maybe it's more apt to say something like eBay, where yes, you do have the main site right there, and they could be handling some of it. However, it's really third-party sellers who are applying, who are putting up the listings, and then at that point, it's really going to be companies such as Nintendo who need to report those listings and have them taken down. But you take 2 down, 10 more are going to crop up. That's usually how it goes until the platform ends up putting some kind of limiters in mind, or they start just cleaning it up themselves. The reason why I said eBay is because it's not necessarily eBay doing a lot of sales, it's really users on the eBay site who are doing sales. But Walmart is taking more of the Amazon approach, where even though you can buy stuff from Walmart on Walmart's site, they've been allowing third-party sellers for a while. So you end up seeing, you know, Nintendo 64 cartridges such as this, where they are brand new, but it is a Super Mario 64 ROM hack that is pressed onto a cartridge. This one here being Shotgun Mario 64, which I feel like that would not get a kids to adult rating on here. However, it was mentioned on here that there was someone on LinkedIn who was pointing this out. It was a professor, actually, who was pointing this out here. And then at one point, Doug Bowser himself and Nintendo were also tagged. And he just responded by saying here, appreciate the visibility, with a thumbs up emoji. Now, not only this is a little bit funny here, but we could be going a little conspiratorial as well too. It's not inaccurate to say that physical game sales have been declining across the board. However, part of it too, as someone who is a physical collector, is that more and more in the last few years, it's really been with supply chain. It's been with several distribution centers closing down, a few physical production plants closing down. So the answer to declining physical sales is much more complex than just saying it's easier to go digital or people prefer digital. It's more complex than that. But the reason why I bring that up is because I had seen a tweet about it, I believe from Nintendo or something, but they ended up covering that Walmart, as of a few months ago, ended up canceling a lot of pre-orders on their site, and they even said at one point that Nintendo is not letting them sell new games, like new first-party games, on Walmart.com. You can still get them, like brand new Nintendo games. You can still get them in store, but you can't get them from the website anymore. And the same thing was going on with Amazon as well too. And if you're doubting me on this, you can give this a shot. Go to Amazon, go to Walmart, the websites, and try to pre-order Super Mario Party Jamboree. And the listing doesn't even come up. And that is a big first-party title that surprised me that I couldn't find on there for a bit. And then the reason why I'm bringing all this up and bringing it in front of this article here is that it seems like maybe this is coincidental, but the timing does seem to kind of match as well too from the last few months. There could be something going on with Nintendo and Walmart and Nintendo and Amazon, where Nintendo's been talking to these online retailers and saying, hey, look, we're not going to give you stock of our new games. We're not going to give you stock of our stuff. We're not going to give you brand new stock of our products, and you can't sell any of them on your websites until you clean up all the stuff like this. Now, how much of this has been cleaned up, I'm not 100% sure. However, I don't really think it's a coincidence when you have some visibility like this. It's not like it's been hidden. It's been going on for several years now at this point, and you have two giant retailers, Walmart, where apparently they are not stocking, they are not even putting up listings for brand new upcoming Nintendo titles on their site, and Amazon, where again, debatably one of the biggest online retailers out there, if not the biggest one, at least in North America, for some reason you cannot pre-order the latest Nintendo Switch games that are going to be coming out. There's something there is what I'm saying. But let me know your thoughts on that. Either way, that is about it for this video right here. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all had some fun. I hope you all got to learn a few things, maybe be a little bit disappointed at times as well too, although I'm not hoping for that, but there was definitely some disappointing news in this episode, which can be understandable. Either way, I like to wrap up these episodes at the end using a keyword or a key phrase. And if you use that keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Typically, I do pick up something off of my desk, and I like to use that as a keyword or key phrase. I'm currently holding a Raspberry Pi Pico, which is essentially just a nice little board that is easy to use for the RP2040 microcontroller. So how about we end up using micro? Did you ever end up using microtapes? Have you heard of microtapes? What is your favorite microcontroller? Is it the RP2040? Let me know. If you use the word micro in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end. Anyways, that is about it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode of ModChat, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching and listening, everyone. And until next time.